Sorry, I had to pee very quickly in between lives. But I'm going to wait. I got a few questions. I got one on ox bile and HCl. And I got one on Hey Ivy. I got one on HCl. Okay, I'm going to wait for everyone that was there to join again really quick, and then I'll answer those questions. Okay, so one question was, what ox bile and what HCl do I recommend? It's kind of one of those things where you, ox bile, you're in your supplements, you're looking for this most simple amount of fillers. I don't think that like magnesium stearate and cellulose, it's best to get the least amount of fillers as possible. However, sometimes it's hard to find one. So Nutricology is a pretty good brand and you can find it on Amazon for ox bile. And then for HCl with pepsin, there's a few brands, but I tend to use Doctor's Best, but there are some other brands. You're just looking for HCl with pepsin, and some of the brands, you always want to look at the milligrams. So some of them are really, really low. So you have to take like so many to equal one pill. So I really like the Doctor's Best one because it has like, I think I want to say like 500 or 650 milligrams or so, which means that you don't need as many. How do you know how much carbs to handle? I actually answered this in my last live, which is up. What do you think about taking folic acid, or do you recommend folate? Folic acid is poison, you guys. It is absolute poison. It is sickening to me that it's being put into foods, fortified. Yeah, you do not want to take folic acid. You want to take folate. Folic acid really depletes the liver of an enzyme because here's the deal. Folate gets absorbed in the digestive tract. It gets absorbed by certain gut bacteria. Folic acid has to be broken down in the liver first, and then it uses a lot of enzymes that we don't have a lot of to actually be made into folate. So it has to go into one more process, which can actually deplete you of a lot of nutrients, and it can mess with your iron levels, it can mess with your B vitamin levels, and it can totally mess with your liver. It's quite toxic. So you don't want to take folic acid, honestly. I would take folate all the way. How has your DIY light therapy been working? It's been awesome. I'm really enjoying it. This week I actually, like, I'll be honest, I haven't been really good about it, but you know, like, my goal is like, so, you know, I went keto about a year ago, and my hair, one of my main symptoms for PCOS is hair loss, and I know you guys are like, oh, you have great hair, but like, my hair was thinning so much, and I've been like trying to get to the bottom of, my regrowth is fine, but it's growing back finer, and I do have hair loss that runs in the family, so it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, oh, I gotta get to the bottom of it. But keto destroyed my hair, and it wasn't while I was on it, it was like the months afterwards. I just like, it caused so much stress on my body. And so now, like, my hair growth loss has kind of like slowed down and stopped, but now the goal is like regrowth and like really getting these like little baby hairs. And right here, like, so this is kind of like, so I had like two major bald spots, but this area bald first, and then this area is now like slowly growing back, but it like really balded. But see, like, all this hair is new hair growth, all of this. And that's pretty good, right? Like, that's not bad for a complete bald spot. So I've been working on it, but like slowly now this side is bothersome. So I think it's like, you know, this side's now slowly starting to grow back, but it's taking a while. I mean, obviously hair growth is slow, but yeah, I mean, it's going really, really good. And I'm using that in conjunction with a few other things. And of course I'm going to write a blog post about it and do a YouTube video about it, but I want to make sure like I'm pretty successful before I like just say like, oh, do what I'm doing. But like another thing that I've been using is topical caffeine to stimulate hair growth as well. So there's a few other things I've been doing, like diet wise and supplement wise, and I will do like a full comprehensive like blog post and video once I have like some clear results to show you. Like, obviously these are results and I have a lot of new growth, but at the end of the day, like, I really want to get my thickness back. What brand of chlorophyll do I use? I use World Organic brand, and you can find it on Amazon, or most health food stores will have it. I've been wanting to buy everything, but waiting to hear your verdict. Sorry if you've said this already. Oh yeah, no. I really think that the light therapy device is really beneficial. There is so much as too much use of red light, so it's kind of one of those things where you don't want to do like more than, 30 minutes a day or even less. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's good. I think it's worth the money for sure. like compared to like a Juve or a red light man, it has 660 nanometers, which is pretty dang good. Anything above 600, like if you look at all the research studies on red light, anything above 600 has a very therapeutic effect. Obviously, the higher the nanometer, the further and deeper it penetrates. However, you know, I'm willing to spend $45 over, you know, $1,000. And if I was gonna buy like a red light man or the Juve, the only benefit I see with that is that they have like a long one that you can hang on a door and do like whole body red light therapy. I guess that would be like a nice thing to have, but I'm not willing to drop like, you know, thousands of dollars on it, like, unfortunately. So I think $45 is a good kind of trade-off for something that's gonna do the trick for sure. Any supplements, vitamins you recommend for infants? Also, our peds nurse mentioned detox methods for post-vaccinations, like bentonite clay on their feet. Any other ideas? You know, it's like one of those things where I definitely recommend doing your research, and there are a lot more women that are really good about supplements and vitamins for kids. I will DM you afterwards for somebody. There's a doctor who says she's like a pediatrician mom doctor or something. She has an account all about like feeding your kids and supplementing with kids and things like that. And so she has a lot of great tips for things like detoxification and supplements and vitamins and things like that. So I would check her out, but I gotta look her up. I don't know her name, and then I'll DM you her name for that. But yeah, I don't work specifically with children, and for me, I just get a little bit nervous because I just don't do a lot of research on things specifically for kids, and so I don't know the dosage changes and things like that. Like, I can give general recommendations, but I don't want, kids are very sensitive, and it's so important to be very careful with them when it comes to like supplements and vitamins, because they need a very different dosage than that. Always so happy to see you. I've learned so much from you. I'm so glad, Lynn. Any recommendations to stop hair breakage? I comb it out after a shower and so much hair breaks off. I don't think it's falling out, just breaking. Well, that could still be a thyroid issue. It could also be like a saturated fat issue. Where are you getting your fat from? You know, if you're getting your fat from all polyunsaturated fats or unsaturated fats, that can really damage the hair. Also, progesterone. Like, I always say this, guys, because it's just like the thing. Like, I always say most women have low progesterone. They're letting estrogen dominate their life because their liver's not working properly, or they're not ovulating or ovulating well, and so they're not making enough progesterone to keep things in check, or their liver's not functioning properly, and so testosterone's turning into estrogen, or you know, things are not detoxifying well. And so it's important to make sure you have enough progesterone, and it's important to make sure your thyroid's optimally functioning for hair issues, because you could throw supplements at hair all day long, and if the issue is not fixed, then no amount of supplements will work. Sometimes, though, hair breakage has to do with a protein issue, and it doesn't necessarily mean you're not eating enough. It means that you are not digesting and absorbing enough. Digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid are needed to absorb protein. And if you don't have enough, or your body's not breaking down that protein properly, then there can be a problem. Trying to work on sleep quality, diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia, sleep a ton, but I'm never rested. Any advice? Get a Dutch test done, girl. Get that Dutch test done. You've got to see where your cortisol levels are diurnally, meaning throughout the day. You probably have an inverse circadian rhythm, meaning that your cortisol is pounding through the evening and you're low right when you wake up because your body just used all its energy up while you slept, or while you're, during the night. Sometimes darkness can stimulate cortisol, and so using your incandescent light, not an LED light. If you do LED, you're gonna destroy your sleep. Using an incandescent light, or using some type of, red tinted or amber tinted light bulb, can be helpful to keep on while you're sleeping because it can keep cortisol from being produced. But incandescent light specifically can be helpful. You don't want to shine it on your body. It's not like, oh, like put a spotlight on you. You just want to make sure the room has like a nice low glow. That can actually be like life-changing for women who struggle with hypersomnia or insomnia, like just sleep problems in general, and can't get to the bottom with it. You know, they do their journaling before bed, they get their mind calmed down, they do their bedtime snack, they're doing adaptogenic herbs, like they're doing everything they possibly can, and they're still not sleeping good. Then there's one of those things where it's kind of like, you got to try like more intense things, and sometimes darkness can be stressful for the body. You have to think of it in terms of adapting or surviving. When humans are in the dark, we don't have night vision, right? We are very much vulnerable at night. And so if somebody is awake, past 11 p.m. or a long time into the dark, the body's like, hey, we got to pump out cortisol. We've got to pump out stress hormones because we got to keep the body alert, awake, ready for anything, because you are definitely low on the totem pole once it's dark outside. And so, first of all, you've got to get to bed by 10 p.m. Once 11 p.m. rolls around, you've got that second wave of cortisol. You're awake. You're going to be awake for 5 hours after that. You got to get to bed by 10. That's a must. That's what I'm saying in Fully Nourished for you guys. If you truly want good sleep and you want to rest and recover, you've got to get to bed by 10. Before 11 period. And then you've also got to wind yourself down before bed. We don't like throw a baby in the crib and we're like, okay, go to bed, bye. It's the same thing with us. We don't just like lay down and hit the pillow and like expect ourselves to sleep. It's ridiculous. We've got to have a routine. We've got to wind ourselves down, turn down the lights, amber tint your screens, or even don't look at screens. Even better, read a book. And just actually like learn to wind yourself down, clear your mind, relax, get everything done, like stop working at a certain point in the day, and just really work on winding yourself down for evening. This is called sleep hygiene. I termed it, sleep hygiene because it's very important to almost practice a proper night routine if you want to have a good next day. So that's kind of my recommendations. But yeah, I would try the incandescent light while you're sleeping. It can be very, very helpful for getting cortisol down while you're sleeping. Do you take collagen peptides? I do keto now, and it was the one thing that stopped my hair loss. Yeah, because that hair loss was probably driven by inflammation stemming from gut issues. So it's one of those things where, yeah, you should definitely take some kind of gelatinous source, especially if you're not good about getting like nose to tail style of eating. Collagen is one of those things where is really necessary, especially if you're doing lots of muscle meats. My hair is thinning. What can I do to stop it from thinning so much? I've got my thyroid checked and everything was normal. I'm on the pill but switching to hormonal IUD soon. What can I do? So if you have hair loss that runs in the family, or you started experiencing hair loss while on the pill, you're probably sensitive to the synthetic hormones on the pill. And unfortunately, the IUD has similar hormones. They usually both use levonorgestrel. You have to look into your brand of birth control, what combination is it, what actual hormone is in it. But if they're both levonorgestrel and you're reacting to that, you probably will react a similar way on the IUD, but you have to kind of do your research on that. But usually birth control in women that are susceptible definitely can cause hair loss for sure. Which are the best probiotics? I'm lactose intolerant, and I know lactobacillus strains are bad, but it seems to really help me. Yeah, so lactobacillus can cause lactic acid overproduction, which can mess with bacterial balance for sure. I really like if you're gonna do a probiotic, really making your own, like making your own kvass or making your own like kombucha can be really great. Not store-bought, they're different. They use lactic acid producing bacteria. Or you can do like a spore-based probiotic, like Thrive probiotic is great, or Mega Spore Biotic. I'm losing hair in the same spots you were. Yeah, you can thank testosterone for that, and the androgenic nature of birth control, and also probably estrogen as well. For hair loss, rosemary really seemed to help me. I had all this new hair growth. Have you tried it? Yeah, I've definitely tried rosemary essential oil, but I do caffeine because caffeine tends to work better. New to your page, what are your certifications or experience? Yeah, I'm a functional nutritionist, so I started as a personal trainer, and then I became a certified nutritionist consultant, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and a holistic health coach. And so I pretty much do wellness consulting, but I have over like 8 years of experience in the health and wellness field, and I'm kind of known for, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome and 3 autoimmune diseases about 6 months to a year post birth control. And so I specialize in hormonal imbalance and kind of healing after birth control, and also reversing. I don't want to say reversing or the word healing. That's not really the thing. It's more of like really restoring your body from the metabolic distress that is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and working on immunity through metabolic healing. But yeah, that's kind of my, I guess, I don't know how else to describe my experience. Hey, my sister has bad pain in her gallbladder from time to time. What would cause this? Probably improper bile flow. And, I'm going to sound like a broken record right now, but estrogen dominance is going to really make that bile quite sticky. So want to work on bile flow. Beets are really helpful. Dandelion root tea or dandy blend. Bitters can be helpful for bile flow. Ox bile, hydrochloric acid, and then also getting progesterone levels up are going to help with bile flow, especially if she's estrogen dominant. Remember, guys, long life of estrogen dominance usually leads you to gallbladder removal during menopause. That's kind of what it looks like, because if your bile's, not flowing well, it's going to get viscous, it's going to get thick, and the gallbladder's going to get clogged until it's not functioning properly. And the doctor's going to say, hey, you got to get your gallbladder removed now. And it's from a long time of bile flow not flowing properly. Can you recommend non-toxic cookware skillet? Yeah, I got this question on my last live, and I forget the name every time, and so I've got to post it on my stories. I'm gonna write it down right now. I will post it afterwards. Cookware. I'll link it to Amazon. There's 2 skillets that are okay, but at the end of the day, you guys, non-stick skillets are usually pretty toxic for the most part, and you gotta really be careful with how high you cook them at, and what utensils you use. You never want to use metal to scrape it, and you never want to cook non-toxic skillets at high heat, or no matter how non-toxic they are, they will become toxic that way. You referenced early in a you recently early had a story on it, but what could cause stomach pain post bowel movement? Well, it's one of those things where when people say stomach pain, it's like, what is it actually? A stomach pain? Is it really, really high up? That's where your stomach is. If it feels like right here, that's not your stomach. That is your small intestine. And then your large intestine goes around that small intestine. So stomach pain is really, I don't know. If it was truly your stomach, I don't know. If it's your small intestine, it could be that the ileocecal valve is kind of stuck open. There's still fecal matter stuck in the small intestine. It could be SIBO. It could be you're not having a full bowel movement. Yeah, there could be a lot of reasons why. But first, you kind of have to pinpoint where it actually is. And just Google intestines. Look at a picture, a diagram of where your small intestine is, where your large intestine is, where your stomach is, because you need to pinpoint where that is. A stomach ache after a bowel movement is really interesting. It can happen for sure, especially if there's like some severe toxicity issues or bile flow issues, but usually would be more likely to be a small intestine pain. How much potassium do we need each day? Is it easy to get it through food? What food is rich in potassium? We need a lot of potassium. As much as you possibly can. I would say your aim is 400 to 500 milligrams through food, not through, supplements. You can supplement with it, but you want to mostly try to get it through food. My favorite sources of potassium are going to be coconut water and orange juice. Those are my favorite sources of potassium, but you can get them from potatoes. Avocados have some potassium, and other fruits and fruit juices. But the main, honestly, if you're trying to get I would treat coconut water as a potassium supplement. It's very rich in potassium. I tried taking collagen peptides, but it did not suit me at all. Any advice? I lately can't digest any beef or meats, even though I've just eaten these entire life. Is collagen just not for me? It really depends on where you get your collagen peptides. Collagen, when it's produced, so you have to understand that collagen is gelatin that's been broken down, so it no longer gelatinizes like gelatin does. does. In that process, if the company that's doing it is processing it wrong, like I will use a company's name that starts with rhymes with riboflavins. You can actually create MSG in that process. So, it's not unnatural MSG. It's natural MSG is made. It's a protein, monosodium glutamate. And that is a problem. You do not want to be supplementing with MSG. So you need to be very cautious about the brands that you buy from and understand if it's processed well. Some people cannot handle collagen. They have to do gelatin. So it's one of those things where, it might not be for you, but it also could be an issue. I mean, collagen can cause some severe detoxification. I mean, you're supplementing with glycine, you're supplementing with things that are going to really support that liver. And sometimes when you start working on your liver and bile flow, all of a sudden you'll start to see, now I'm not digesting things well because junk's actually starting to come out the liver and gallbladder for the first time in a long time. But at the end of the day, collagen might not work for you, and you might need to get gelatin from natural sources, oxtails and doing bone broth and maybe doing gelatin. But I like Great Lakes brand for both gelatin and collagen. They process their things properly, and they are high quality. Not all collagen is created equal, and some of the more fancy or fabulous brands are just that really good marketing. With a topical caffeine worse than migraines, how do you use the caffeine? I mix it up in water in a spray bottle and just spray it on my scalp, so it doesn't make my hair greasy or oily, and I can use it as much as I want. Topical caffeine, in my opinion, whenever I have a headache, I actually found that there was one time I had a headache, and this was like a couple weeks ago, and I was just putting my topical caffeine on like I normally do, and my headache went away. And I was like, damn, I just came up with like a headache solution. So I actually find that caffeine, that's why Sudafed, which is a medication that a lot of people take for migraines, has 200 milligrams of caffeine in it. Caffeine is actually known to really help with headaches. But if you have migraines or headaches, you have estrogen issues. Can we overdo it on potassium? I'm hooked on coconut water. I don't think, I wouldn't worry about it as long as you're getting it from natural sources. It's one thing if you're getting it from a supplement, you probably could overdo it, but if you're doing it with coconut water, it's no problem. I'm hooked on coconut water too. I have a large glass every day. I'm just obsessed with it. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much. It's just one of those things where, obviously you don't want to supplement too much, but if you're getting it from natural sources, it's probably fine. Is the Dutch test very accurate? Is it accurate with showing cortisol? Yes, fairly. I mean, as accurate as a test could be. I find that blood tests for cortisol are really not very accurate. They're not a great representation of where your stress is at, especially if you're just getting one blood test once a day. You know what I mean? Or one blood test in the morning, I should say. The Dutch test, remember, it tests urine metabolites. And so I like it because I look at the urine as how the body's getting hormones out of the body. And I'm like, ooh, I get to kind of put puzzle together. And how you're metabolizing hormones tells you a lot of things. So when people's estrogen comes back low on the Dutch test, I stop for a second and I say, is estrogen low, or is it not coming out of the body properly? And it's usually that second one. So I like the Dutch test because it kind of tells you which pathways estrogen is going down. I work in a different way than practitioners. A lot of practitioners just take a test word for it. I use tests as a tool to maybe, paint the picture of the body. But when it comes to cortisol, it's pretty dang accurate for a measure of stress hormones. So for me, I always say, if your stress hormones are high on a Dutch test, they're probably even higher in reality. So it's one of those things where I always go by symptoms, but it's nice to have a test to kind of correlate with symptoms. And I can even with clients all the time, they're like, wow, are you a mind reader? And I'm like, no, I'm just a test reader. I'll ask them, I'll be like, do you feel really stressed and anxious around 2 p.m.? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because your cortisol is really high, around that noon mark, and it tells you, it can really track your patterns for the day. And so it really helps me really implement strategies for people to really lower stress. So like if their cortisol is really high at noon and I ask them, I say, when's the last time you eat? And they're like, well, I actually just drink some coffee at 6 a.m. And I'm like, that's why. So we'll implement a breakfast, and I'll say, before that cortisol spike hits, I really want you drinking some coconut water or something to lower stress, and we can actually implement strategies throughout the day based on the timing of where your body's the most stressed out. So it's a really marvelous way. The only thing the Dutch test doesn't test is your thyroid, and I think it's a really great compliment because to me, I like to see the whole picture, and it tells me the picture of sex hormones and stress hormones, but it doesn't tell me where thyroid is at. And I really like to know that too, because it really can work in conjunction with stress. Like you can really see what's going on with each of them. I love the idea of raw carrots to detoxify estrogen, but I have IBS and raw carrots are so hard to digest. Any options? So they're actually supposed to come out on the other end. If they are really wreaking havoc on your body, well, remember, IBS just means that they have no idea what's going on in your small intestine. Usually IBS is caused by SIBO, and raw carrots can help with that. So if raw carrots actually make you like physically in pain or are really irritating, they could actually be doing something really helpful. But if they're really like uncomfortable, you can shred them up and see if that helps you digest them a little better. It's okay for carrots to come out on the other end. That's actually what you want, because that means they're kind of scraping everything and they're absorbing things, but they're pretty gentle. So they're not like something where it's going to be like a really raw like fiber that's going to really wreak havoc on the gut lining. So if you're just worried about them coming out on the other end, don't worry, that's normal. But if they're actually causing you to be uncomfortable, maybe try shredding them with a shredder and see if that helps. What are your thoughts on poultry? I can't digest meats lately, so poultry is my next option. Am I overdoing it on poultry if I eat it every day? Probably. It's very rich in L-tryptophan. It can make gut issues a lot worse, because L-tryptophan is that precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is usually partially to play in IBS. So if you can't digest meats, I would really look into hydrochloric acid or ox bile. Maybe that's low. I've learned so much from you. You are awesome. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and experience. I appreciate it. I feel like my breath has been shallow for weeks and I can't seem to relax. Not even meditation helps. Could ashwagandha help? It could. I really like rhodiola if I was going to do an adaptogen, but shallow breathing and shallow breath, especially if it's paired with chest tightness, sometimes magnesium can actually help relax you, or potassium-rich foods. On the flip side, progesterone can also be helpful. So if that's continuing on, it could be stress at play, like cortisol or adrenaline or things like that. What are your views on heavy metal detoxes? I saw a naturopathic doctor and she hooked me up to a Mora machine, which showed I had some traces of aluminum in my body. I've gotten hormonal issues, which I've already been aware started to heal. I don't think that, like, for example, you guys, I've done it all. Like, I've literally done it all. Like, people tell me, like, oh, I've done this, and I'm like, I've already done that, and heavy metal detoxes is included in that. I've seen, like, so many naturopathic doctors and functional doctors. It's ridiculous and sick, and I've spent so much money, it's stupid. But, one of the doctors I went to, she was on a heavy metals kick, and so it was like, oh, you have heavy metals and you got aluminum and lead. And so her method was actually putting me on an EDTA, or heavy metal chelation, intravenously. I learned my lesson with that, unfortunately, afterwards. Hindsight is 2020, because when, you put intravenous chelation into your body, it pulls heavy metals out. And I go by the fact that the body's really wise. I know that the body doesn't want heavy metals, but I also know that the body is wise enough to know what it can handle. And if the liver's not functioning properly or the gut's not functioning properly, meaning that if you detoxify heavy metals but you can't get them out of your body, you're forcing your body to put them into another tissue. There's actually a few research studies that show that people that go through heavy metal detoxes or chelation therapy have higher concentrations of heavy metals in both their kidneys and their brain. So that shows that you're actually freeing heavy metals, and then you're forcing the body to put them somewhere else. That's even more dangerous. You want to make sure that the body is pulling heavy metals out as it pleases, because it knows what it can handle way more than we know what it can handle. There are natural ways to actually chelate heavy metals. Orange juice is actually a heavy metal chelator, which is why I recommend it. It has so many benefits and uses that can be so therapeutic, and that's why I always say it should be treated as a supplement. Modified citrus pectin can also be a great heavy metal chelator, and then so can coffee. Coffee is a heavy metal chelator. It mostly chelates like aluminum and iron and sometimes mercury, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's very helpful at chelating. And then cilantro is also a great chelator. So I prefer natural ways. I would never do some kind of chelation therapy ever again. The scariness of like experiencing dementia type symptoms and almost feeling like your brain is like not working properly is quite frightening. And so I think that I personally learned my lesson on that, and I kind of have looked into that, and yeah, there's a lot of people that say like it's not a good idea to force heavy metals out of the body against what the body's trying to do, but there are natural ways that you can kind of work on heavy metals, and something as simply as just like drinking some fresh squeezed orange juice every day and drinking a cup of coffee every day can help chelate well. Best protocol to fix estrogen dominance. Should I be supplementing with probiotics long term? Best protocol to fix estrogen dominance. I guess I don't believe in protocols. I just believe that we should really be focusing on daily detox. We should be eating nutrient dense that takes estrogen into consideration. And I don't recommend foods that are going to burden the body so that the body can't detoxify estrogen. Wheat specifically. Wheat is just awful for us, and if it's not traditionally prepared, meaning it's not soaked for 12 hours and not fermented properly, either with a sour starter or with yeast, it's not going to work very well with our bodies. And so wheat is not my friend. I'm not a big fan of saying like gluten-free, because when we start to say gluten-free, we start to switch our wheat-based products with junky gluten-free products, which is just as bad, honestly. And so I think it's better to cook with ancient grains. Like if you're gonna do bread, like cook with einkorn flour or spelt flour and rise it properly. Use a sour starter or a yeast starter. And then eating a daily carrot is so important for estrogen detoxification. Dandelion root tea can be helpful. Drinking the chlorophyll lemonade that has a tablespoon of chlorophyll, a juice of half a lemon or a lime, and 2 tablespoons of cranberry concentrate can be very helpful. But yeah, I mean, all of this is going to be in Fully Nourished, you guys. Part of healing your metabolism is boosting your progesterone and getting rid of estrogen. That's part of healing insulin resistance, because estrogen drives inflammation of the cell, which makes the cell not respond to insulin properly. Should I be supplementing with probiotics long term? It really depends on the type of probiotics. I personally don't. I think that the whole, I call it the SIBO revolution, meaning that all of a sudden everyone has, and their mom has SIBO. I have SIBO, you have SIBO, we all have SIBO. And I'm like, why? Why is everyone in the health and wellness community developing SIBO? Is it maybe because they're acting like probiotics are like sent from the heavens above, and they're taking all these random strains of bacteria that are wild and just putting them into their digestive tract? Might be. So probiotics should be taken with great caution, and strains matter. Just because it has probiotics in it doesn't mean it's automatically good for you. Many of commercial probiotic products are not. They use strains that are easily stored, don't go bad with heat, and they're not even natural to the human digestive tract, and they usually cause more harm than good. So if you do a probiotic, I only recommend spore-based probiotics like Thrive or Megaspore, or making your own fermented foods. Preserve some lemons, make some kvass, some kombucha. Those are really easy ways to get probiotic in, or make bread with yeast. You can also do that. So there are fun ways to get probiotics in for sure. Just recently started grinding my teeth at night. Is this stress related? Do you have tips to stop this? Hell yeah, it's stress related for sure. So there's some issues usually with grinding with jaw tightness. So you need to, this does take consciousness and mindfulness. Notice throughout the day what you're doing with your teeth. Are you clenching? Then that might be a jaw tightness. You can actually do, I think it's called trabucal massage. I don't know the word, but it's where you actually stick your fingers in and really massage the inner muscles of both your cheeks and your jaw. You can also get that done professionally by someone like an esthetician, but you know, it's like one of those things where you kind of want to do it every single day. And then also work on your neck tightness. Like, are you tight in the back of your neck, which is going to pull on your jaw. And then it can be stress related. So like what's going on with your stress levels, what's going on with your gut. A lot of people with gut issues have teeth grinding issues, and it's because pathogens are the most active while you sleep. And so when pathogens are active, they're secreting their nasty little toxins, and those toxins are making the body have to they're inflaming the body, and in response to inflammation, the body does secrete cortisol. So that can totally make you grind your teeth for sure. I recommend sometimes just taking an adaptogen before bed can help, or doing like really mineral rich something like coconut water, or taking magnesium or potassium. You really want to focus on things that are going to relax you while you sleep. Does weight loss really help with PCOS symptoms and getting my period regularity back on track? I've been on a weight loss journey since March for health, but wondering if this will help my PCOS. So unfortunately, you guys, how you lose weight is what makes all the difference. If you don't acknowledge that your body stores fat for safety. We need to start seeing fat in our society as safety. When you look at someone who's overweight, we can't say like, oh, they eat too much and they don't exercise enough. That's BS. BS. They decided that because when someone is overweight, they also have a high appetite. They correlated that with the idea that people that are overweight must eat too much. In my experience, it's exactly the opposite, because society has told people that eating too much and exercising too little is what causes weight gain, which is just not true. Your appetite increases when you are overweight because your body needs fuel to store energy and then to also run your cells. It takes more fuel to be storing fat and running your body. And the reason that the body is storing fat is because it does not feel safe. There's metabolic distress, and the literal worst thing we can do for a body that needs to lose weight is restrict calories and exercise more. It causes metabolic distress, and it makes us store more fat, and we have to fight harder and harder and harder. There's always a hormonal reason to why we can't lose weight, because healthy bodies stay at a healthy weight without trying, right? You don't have to worry about stabilizing your weight or restricting calories. Have to understand that society's idea of weight loss and being overweight is absolute baloney and should be thrown in the trash can or thrown out the window and crushed into a million pieces, because it's just not true. And so how you lose weight can affect how your PCOS symptoms improve. If you're losing weight by increasing thyroid function and getting your progesterone levels up, then of course, because you are actually focusing on whole body balance, which is actually resulting in the body feeling safe so that can burn through your fat stores, right? But if we're forcing our body to burn fat under duress, meaning that it's because we're actually forcing the body to raise stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, we're actually making PCOS symptoms worse, because PCOS is driven by stress and estrogen. And remember, the body doesn't want to pull from the fat cells under duress very quickly, because what's stored in your fat cells other than glucose and free fatty acids? Estrogen and other toxins. And unfortunately, when the body has to pull from the fat cells under duress, there's a lot of toxins being released into the body which are directly anti-metabolic. This is why when people are, overweight, I don't even want to say severely overweight, but this applies to people who are obese or severely overweight, but just people that, have that extra 20 or 30 pounds to lose as well. When they restrict calories and overexercise, they can lose the weight, right? Sometimes. But then they gain it all back, right? They gain it all back and more, because they just destroyed their metabolism with the way that they lost weight. So true weight loss and PCOS, you have to understand that weight is a protective mechanism. Fat equals safety to the body. And when you see fat, whether it's on your body or someone else's, you need to recognize that that person's body or my body feels like it is unsafe, and so it is storing fat for fuel. And the only way to get out of this safety issue where you're not feeling safe is to make your body feel safe. And eat every 3 to 4 hours. Eat enough protein, carb, and fat. Do not restrict calories and do not over-exercise. Instead, focus on sunlight and sleep and getting your hormones balanced and focusing on liver and gut health. And looky there, you're losing weight no problem without having to restrict or damage your body in the process. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little complicated because our culture is so freaking messed up. Their mindset is off, and it really ends up messing with people, how they go about losing weight, which can end up causing more harm than good, unfortunately. How should a glucometer be used? A glucometer should be used post-meal. So I say you should always take your, post-meal glucose, and you should take it like 1 to 2 hours after meals. I don't think you need to obsessively take your blood glucose. I think that you can take it, I usually will do it once a week throughout the day, but you can take it every day if you wanted to post meals, or if you're trying to figure out something in my bathroom just fell. You can try to figure out what your post-meal glucose clearance is, and you can kind of use it to figure out if you're trying more carbohydrates or something, you can see how your body's clearing those carbohydrates. It's a good tool. How do you take hydrochloric acid? I've heard of the HCl challenge, but not sure how to properly do it. I actually explained it in my last slide, but I'll explain it really quickly. So, you take 1 pill at a protein-rich meal. You see if you experience any burning. If you don't experience any burning, then at your next protein-rich meal, you take 2. If you don't experience any burning, next protein-rich meal, you take 3, and so on and so forth until you experience some burning. And then let's say you experience burning at 7. Well, then your dosage is 6. So you would take 6 until you experience burning, and then you move down to 5, and so on and so forth, and you kind of lower your you get your hydrochloric acid production up, and you lower the amount you're taking. But you don't want to take too much. Some people, I've had people that come to me and they're like, I'm on 15 pills and I don't feel anything, and I'm like, yeah, that's a yikes situation. So you don't want to, that's a bigger issue probably. That's a protein deficiency, or, a stress issue or something like that. You don't want to excessively take hydrochloric acid, but you can take I would say anywhere from 5 to 10 is fine. Just wanted to say the deep breathing, it has really made a difference in calming anxiety. It's so shocking breathing can make such a difference. Thank you. I'm so happy. So a lot of times anxiety is unfortunately caused by physical issues and an oxygen deficiency. Your brain is registering stress, right? You're in that survival or fight or flight state, which is why you're worried all the time. You're negative. You're, assuming the worst of people. You're jumpy. That's just you in a state of survival, right? And so part of it is that oxygen is not making it to your tissues. Now, this could be because of gut health, because of nutrient deficiencies, and other things. However, it's something as easy as deep breathing can really increase the amount of oxygen in your body and really relieve symptoms while you're working on something else. And I think every woman should be practicing deep breathing, whether it's in the form of meditation or a guided breathing practice, or just alternating nostril breathing, or the 4-7-8 breath. That's my favorite, which is breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and exhale for 8. It can be really, that exhale can really, you'll find your body really relaxing. Many women were in that constant state of stress, fight or flight. We're really negative towards ourselves, or perfectionistic, or we're constantly nitpicking everything. And it's mostly an internal turmoil that's going on, that's being, it's almost like a vomiting, it's our internal turmoil coming out. And so breathing can really just be something simple, like you're seeing, to kind of lower stress on the body while you're working on everything else. But I'm so glad that that's working. I follow a few people who are raw foodists, and it seems like they found the fountain of youth. They've been eating like this for decades, and some other raw foodists look awful and unhealthy. Why? So it's one of those things where you have to understand, everybody's going to eat in a different way, right? And so there are certain things that they're doing right and certain things that they're doing wrong. You'll find that a lot of the raw foodists that avoid nuts and seeds are going to look a lot better. You're going to find that the raw foodists that eat lots of fruit look a lot better, because fruit is the fountain of youth. And people that eat fruit have lower incidence of cancer and all these wonderful things. And so I think, sometimes vegans, there are certain things that the vegan community has gotten correct. And you'll find that a lot of the really healthy looking people are ones that are eating lots of fruit and really easily digested carbohydrates. And the ones that don't look so good are the ones that are not doing that. However, remember, restricting protein or macronutrients, you will hit a wall to a point where your body has now depleted itself of all of its protein and now it's eating itself alive. And then you'll find that they find like a very rapid decline. I've watched a few raw foodists who like looked really good until like their 40s or 45 or 50, and then all of a sudden they just rapidly age very quickly. Their skin all of a sudden looks like leather. Remember that anybody that doesn't have, so you'll see, like I have a round face, but when you start to lose fat in your skin, your body's actually eating itself alive. So you should always have healthy women have a kind of, I don't even want to say like, they are not super duper lean. They have a layer of fat in between their skin and their tissues. They look plump, right? They look like plump and juicy, and there's no sallowness to their skin. Their skin isn't thin. Whereas really lean people that don't even have fat in their skin, like their subcutaneous fat, usually have a higher incidence of death. And there are actually research studies that show that. It shows that their body is eating themselves alive. And so the body can only sustain that for so long, and it's really dependent on the person, how long they've been on that. But at the end of the day, protein is needed for rebuilding tissues. It is the building blocks for your body, and your body will pull as much protein as it can from everywhere it can until, it can't any longer, and then you'll watch your body rapidly decline. Do you recommend a specific brand of bioidentical progesterone that can be bought online? I do have a specific one that I recommend to clients that's a tincture and under the tongue, but I get afraid of recommending it over Instagram because I don't think people are going to use it responsibly. But Smoky Mountain Naturals and Emerita can be a really good starting brand of their lotions or creams, and those can be like a great kind of gentle starting point. But yeah, there are some preparations available underneath the tongue. If you want, you can Google it. You could probably find it. But yeah, that can be a lot more beneficial and a lot more potent, but they do have to be used properly. I really think that a lot of women don't implement bioidentical progesterone properly, or it's like the first thing they go to, and they're not looking at the whole body. Like I've talked about before, it's so important to make sure your estrogen detox is working. And then also, you really do have to pay attention to that thyroid. Sometimes the thyroid and progesterone need to both be supported, and sometimes that does take, getting some thyroid medication or some T3 over the counter. And sometimes progesterone is enough to get things going, but if the thyroid is not functioning properly, then you won't see a huge benefit from supplementing progesterone. But yeah, progesterone is going to really bring estrogen out of those tissues, so you got to make sure it's getting out of the body properly. So making sure you're really supporting the liver and really supporting bile flow. Is corn okay to eat? Remember that corn, wheat, and peanuts are very high mold crops. They have lots of mold in them. And so I don't say like you should avoid it at all costs, but I wouldn't like chow down on corn every single day. Maybe like a few times a week is fine, but I wouldn't obsessively eat corn. It's so much better to get your carbs from roots and fruits. I always get high pulse of dandelion, always wake up with high pulse. What can that be? If you wake up with high pulse, you're stressed from the moment you wake up, and probably have to eat some sugar right before you go to bed. So your body, remember you guys, when you're fasting or sleeping, you're fasting, right? Your liver is working. Your liver is detoxifying, your bowels are moving, your body's going through the brain to clear out toxic proteins. Your body's regenerating and restoring itself while you're sleeping. That is very energy intensive work. We act like when we're sleeping, we're not doing anything. And I'm like, your body's literally regenerating itself while you sleep. And if you don't have any fuel to do so, your body has to make fuel to keep the cells going. And how does it do that? I will keep doing this over and over as a broken record because I want you guys to get it through your head that if fuel is not coming into your trap, it is being made by raising cortisol and adrenaline, which breaks down your muscle tissue, your skin tissue, your collagen tissue, just about everything. You will see your skin thin. You'll start to see dark circles under your eyes, right? You'll start to see that you look sallow and your hair falls out and you wake up with high pulses and maybe high temperatures. Your thyroid's not working properly. You're not ovulating regularly. Why? Because your liver needs fuel, and you have to make it by raising stress hormones. And so if you find yourself regularly waking with high fasting blood glucose or a high pulse, it could be because your body is really not seeing enough sugar during the night. There needs to be some type of sugar implemented. Or another thing, remember, is that stress can also be happening because pathogens in your gut can really actually manipulate blood glucose levels to feed themselves, and your body when there's an infection, your body will absolutely secrete cortisol to protect you from inflammation. And pathogens are very active at night, right? Bugs come out at night. That's the same for your gut. So that could also be why you're waking up with a lot of stress. I've recently realized that I've spent most of my life wanting to lose weight, and so I've been stressing over this most of my life. I cannot wait for Fully Nourished. I'm so excited. Isn't that crazy? Like I woke up to that too a few years ago, and I actually had to get real with myself when I experimented with keto last year, because it was early on in the year, and for some reason, I did it, and I look back and I'm like, why did I really do it? What's my motivation? And I'm like, you know what? I think I was really, truly trying to, get that existential six-pack abs, which I've never had in my life. Never. I've always been a very athletic, more plump girl, small but curvy. And even if I look back at pictures of myself 5 years old, I was, I was buff and I was strong and athletic looking, but still had a nice little plump belly. And I have to acknowledge that my body knows what's best, right? And I just did the module yesterday in Fully Nourished, and it started out with the words, I said, I'm going to teach you the most important lesson that you're ever going to learn in your life. You are not a model. You are a real, living, breathing girl. And if you want to be a statue, you are going to be miserable your whole life, because you will never be a statue, right? And we constantly chase this idea that we're like this statue in time. Oh, remember when I was 17 and I was so lean and this and that? I'm like, of course you've changed, because look at all the things that you've done. Look at all the sunsets that you've seen and all the breath that you've drawn into your lungs. Look at all the places your feet have taken you, and look at, the life that you have lived. Of course your body has changed. Thank God, right? It's had to change and adapt to take in all this life. And that's going to look like little wrinkles, and that's going to look like little stretch marks, and that's going to maybe look like, getting bigger and getting smaller. And that's a good thing. That is a sign that you are alive, right? And if you weren't alive, you would be a statue. You would be a model. And we live in this culture also where we are scrolling through Instagram, right? And we're seeing all these statues. We're seeing all these women that are photoshopping the heck out of their body. You can, I encourage you guys to zoom in on Instagram pictures and start looking for Photoshop signs. And I see it all the time, even on these big pages where people are commenting oh, you're so real. Or these girls are yeah, I'm just raw and real, and I never Photoshop my pictures ever. I would never do that. And then you zoom in, and there's the door in the background's it's what the heck? And they're doing stupid things, they're, carving little curves into their shoulders, or carving little curves out of their biceps, or little shadows for their abs, just enhancing things. And I'm that is just, here we are comparing ourselves to a magical unicorn that doesn't even exist. It's so sad, right? And it's destroying our lives. It's literally sucking the life out of us, making us so negative, making us live in this constant state of being at war with our body and in a fight with our body. It's really unfair. My boyfriend has normal internal temperature, but he constantly emits a lot of heat and has stomach issues normally after he eats a meal. Does this mean his stomach may have low or high acidity? Yeah, it totally could. He could have stomach issues. He could have digestive issues. If he's fine with the internal temperature, maybe get an oximeter and test his pulses when he wakes up. See how high they are. If they're consistently above that 75 to 90 sweet spot, there could be a stress issue at play, a cortisol issue for sure. And then you could totally experiment with hydrochloric acid. Many men are like, they're go-getters. They push themselves too hard. They eat like shit. They don't take care of their bodies. And they eventually, like, they start to see a breakdown, but then they don't, like, they'll complain about it, but they won't do anything about it. And so something as simple as like supplementing hydrochloric acid, but sometimes men can have H. pylori. It's actually more common among men. And that's a bacteria that lives in your stomach. It's kind of like a corkscrew, and it will actually neutralize the stomach acid, and you might get more pain if you take hydrochloric acid. So just pay attention. You want to be like pretty careful with hydrochloric acid. You don't want to like go crazy with it at first. It can sometimes cause more harm than good if there's some other issues going on, but usually it causes a lot of good. Thank you, Jessica. I think you're exactly right about weight loss and safety. I'm definitely addressing that and focusing on a healthier lifestyle and environment. Good, because that's really what, like, I always say, unfortunately, like, our culture is all about, like, we want it now, right? Which is great, and we, like, praise people that are like, oh, I lost 20 pounds this month, and I'm like, well, I mean, probably not a great idea. Like, slow, gradual weight loss, I know it's not that instant gratification, but let's say you lost 20 pounds a year for the next 5 years, and then your body, like, your skin wasn't stretched out, your skin was able to kind of contract itself and heal itself, and you were able to build muscle. After 5 years, you would be at such a place where you were at that healthy, lean body weight that you've always wanted to be, and you'll be able to keep it off for life. Whereas many times I see women that struggle with being severely overweight, they constantly go through this yo-yo where they lose, 40 pounds and then they like gain it back, and then they lose 80 pounds and then they gain it back. And it's just this constant battle throughout their lifetime. And I'm like, even if it took you 5 years to get to a very lean and healthy weight, you would be able to stay there and maintain that for a life without really worrying too much about it, which I think is a better quality of life than constantly fluctuating. I've never been like severely overweight. I've always been that person that like maybe is in that like extra 30 to 40 pounds. I've never been over like 155, which was heavy for me, but I acknowledge like I've never truly struggled with like being severely overweight, and my heart is with people that do, because I know it's a really it's a metabolic dysregulation, and it is a bigger issue than just like you not being disciplined enough. Like, I think people just are shamed so hard for like, oh, you're overweight, you just must just sit and eat donuts on the couch. And I'm like, no, it is a constant battle, because there is severe metabolic dysregulation occurring, right? And it's like, this is not just like a simple like, oh, you need to eat less and exercise more issue. What is the cause of brain fog? I'm so forgetful and sometimes have to read something a few times before I know what I'm actually reading. High stress can really deteriorate the brain quite quickly. So can thyroid issues. It can make you feel really foggy, almost like you're swimming underwater, like you're not quite all there. And then gut issues can also cause really bad brain fog as well. So pretty much everything I talk about here is going to totally affect your brain. You have to look at these diseases that get diagnosed later on in life, as all these symptoms we're experiencing now as young women are just getting worse and worse until they do develop into cardiovascular disease and dementia, right? Brain fog now equals dementia later, you know what I mean? Or Alzheimer's later. It's your body saying like, hey, the brain is being attacked or being broken down, like we need some help. And as people, we're not seeing the correlation. Whereas like we need to start waking up and seeing that symptoms now are the body telling us there's something wrong, and it's going to affect us. It's going to continue to spin out of control later. I'm not saying like brain fog is a direct cause of dementia. I'm just saying that we need to wake up and recognize that certain symptoms like brain fog are a dysregulation occurring, and it's going to continue to spin out of control until it's hard to control, and it's going to be a lot harder to fix. How come the libido spikes when my period starts? Oh yeah, I'm the same way. So, remember your estrogen actually lowers while you're on your menstrual cycle, and you're still having that like residual effects of testosterone and progesterone in the picture. So that drop in estrogen can really actually help the libido quite a bit. But I'm not, like, everyone's a little bit different. And so sometimes, 2 weeks of progesterone or ovulation, or, you ovulated 2 weeks before that, can really increase the metabolic rate, which increases the libido. Remember, you guys, when we start eating more frequently and we get enough sodium and we get enough carbohydrates, remember, libido is your craving for reproduction. And that shows that you are fertile, right? And your body is craving that. Is bioidentical progesterone recommended for PCOS if you have a family history of estrogen-stimulated breast cancer? And I'm trying to be as cautious as possible. Yeah, that's something to look into, but if you have estrogen-stimulated breast cancer in the picture, progesterone is one of those things that keeps estrogen in check. Many women that do actually have a deficiency of progesterone in their bodies. Now, it's important to be very careful with it and make sure you're actively working to detoxify estrogen. If I had estrogen-related cancers in my family, I would also consider vitamin E at least a couple times a week, because vitamin E is directly antagonist, or it actually helps block estrogen in the liver, especially while you're trying to detoxify it. But yeah, I would definitely look into progesterone, bioidentical, not synthetic, because synthetic progesterone actually has estrogenic tendencies. Why can't I lose weight eating 1,200 calories a day? I think it's a hormonal imbalance, because your body is literally starving and you're forcing it to store fat, because fat is safety. When you're restricting calories, your body actually sees it as a famine, unfortunately. What is the right way to eat when you want to start lifting weights? I want to work on my booty. It's so flat. Also afraid of losing weight and being left with loose skin. Yeah, you just want to start lifting weights slowly. I usually recommend just once or twice a week, and you want to make sure that you're feeding yourself really well. I usually recommend sipping on some sorts of carbs while you're working out, like some OJ mixed in your water or some coconut water. It's really helpful to keep cortisol down while you're working out. Can too much testosterone change the shape of your breast? Yeah, it can. Can it be reversed? I'm not really sure. I mean, massage can really help perk them up and stuff like that. I'm going to go. I see Elena's question about libido. I'll go live for like another 30 minutes. So you guys can ask your questions if I didn't get around to them.